Hi, and welcome to another episode of Surrendered Birth Stories. Birth stories, birth education, and the pursuit of surrendering it all to God. Let's get started. Hey everybody, hope you have had a great week. And hopefully by the time this airs, I am having a much better one. If you listened last week, you know that our family got hit with sickness, and at the time it was just all of the kids, but then I got hit with it too. I'm still on the tail end of it, just trying to get rested and get my strength back and get my appetite back, mainly for my milk supply, honestly, because my milk supply tanked during all of that. But when this airs, it'll be Memorial Day, so happy Memorial Day to everybody. We have actually had plans for Memorial Day since before last Memorial Day. My husband was invited to play music for a wedding for a friend of ours down in Wilmington, North Carolina. And so we've had that marked off on our calendars for over a year. And it was going to be our first weekend away from my youngest, Indy. He's almost 8 months now, so that's a pretty big deal. It was going to be our first alone time together since almost a year ago, early last June. So we've really been looking forward to it. And just, I feel like the enemy preys on experiences like that sometimes when he knows there's going to be something good in it for you, some spiritual revival or revival in your marriage. Not that our marriage needs revived as much as it's just going to be wonderful to have some alone time with my husband and connect with him in ways that I can't do when there are 5 kids running around. And I feel like he has done everything in his power to try to prevent this weekend from happening or going smoothly between all the sicknesses for the kids and myself. I'm recording this before we leave town, but when I say I have zero energy, I have zero energy. To get up off the bed and walk to the bathroom makes me dizzy. So I'm just trying to gain my strength. Also, my husband, who is singing and playing guitar this weekend for this wedding, he sliced his finger off. Not his whole finger, the tip of his finger off last weekend. And he's been dealing with that injury, and he has to, play guitar with it, and not just the strumming side, but I'm not a musician. What's the other side called? Oh, babe, you would be so disappointed in me right now. The one where you play the chords and your hands are, I'm thinking about Phoebe from Friends with all of her different hands motions when she says, old lady. If anyone's a Friends fan, you understood what I just said. And if not, you're totally confused, but that's okay. Anyways, it's that finger, his pointer finger on his left side. So, and then we've just had challenges organizationally leading up to this, and things going on at our house right now, apart from sickness, that have just jumped in the way of trying to get ready for this trip. And so, one big prayer that Chris does not get sick, because he's the last man standing and he's got a big important job this weekend. But anyways, that's just a 2-second, actually 3.5, 4-minute peek into our life right now. But you came here to listen to a birth story, and this is a great one. So let's go ahead and jump in to this week's episode. I hope your week has been amazing. When your birth doesn't go exactly how you'd expect, it can be a tough pill to swallow, but God can teach us so much through each and every experience and use it all for His good. Hear how Scotlyn and Jaylen went about preparing for their first child and how the Lord sent a special helper to them to assist them in getting the birth they desired as much as they could help it. Welcome to another episode of Surrendered Birth Stories. I am your host, Kayla Heater, and I have one of my favorite couples with me today. I'm so excited for them to share their story. Why don't you all go ahead and just introduce yourselves, tell us who you are, a little bit about you so we can get to know you better.
Yeah. Well, I'm Jaylen.
I'm Scotlyn.
Yeah. Let's see a little bit about us. Children of the Lord, love that guy. parents to our sweet little boy, Apollos. And I don't know, what about us? We love anime.
Yeah, we love to watch anime. We have been married for almost 2 years. In April will be 2 years. And we live in Graham, kind of near Burlington.
Yeah.
And I'm working part-time right now at a landscaping company. Never saw myself doing that, but it's where the Lord has me right now, and it's good. I mean, we love to be outside anytime that we can.
Which is...
Love to drink coffee. That's my thing, not really Jalen's thing, but...
Yeah, no, I don't like coffee, unfortunate.
Is there a beverage you do like?
I love hot chocolate. I love tea. I love matcha, boba, anything but coffee, pretty much. Yeah. And diet drinks. She loves Diet Coke and all that. And I just can't do it.
But we met at church. We met at Definition of summer of 2020. That's how we kind of got to know each other.
Not really at the church.
I was going to say, we weren't meeting summer of 2020.
True, you're right. But we met at the park. Well, we first met at Lake Daniel Park. We were playing volleyball and stuff there during the summer. So we met through that, kind of through the young adult ministry and stuff. So
through young
that's
adult
how we first connected.
Stuff. Yeah.
You're not the first couple I've heard who've met through the young adult ministry at volleyball outside and ended up getting married.
It was we were all really craving connection at that time.
Yeah. I had a buddy who we were throwing a surprise party for him in the park, and I got there. I'm not a early person. I get to things pretty late regularly, but got there for that before he showed up, which was great. And when I did show up, I was looking for other people who were supposed to be part of the party, and I saw Chris Carson, and Maddie and a couple of others. And so I was like, oh, these are some people that I know. And then these other people must just be other friends of this guy. And so I just went over, and then Chris told me that, this was, not the group of people. Unfortunately.
Wrong group.
Yeah. You were there as an intern helping high schoolers transition to college. It was a small group for that.
Oh, cool.
And so I met her briefly then. But then when we officially had our first conversation and whatnot, it was at Chris Carson's house at the time. And we decided to put on a prayer night and worship night, you know? And we decided to do that on Wednesday nights, and the very first one is when we met. And it was pretty cool, pretty good time.
So Chris Carson's a part of your story a little bit then.
Oh, yeah.
Shout out to Chris Carson, young adult director at Definition Church.
Exactly. If you guys ever need a spouse,
you can't say that he believed in us from the beginning. He kind of questioned if it would work out, but
So
he's
goofy.
still. He was still a part of our story, so
He was suggesting her to me, kind of. We had Chris and I went to get coffee, funnily enough.
Ironically.
I was just drinking some water, and he was asking me, he was like, so are there any girls on the Jaylen radar, the Jadar? And I was like,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. And before I could answer, he was just like, what about Scotland, bro? And I was like, whoa, okay.
The matchmaker.
Kind of match made us,
Yeah. But
well, it worked.
It did. Now we have a baby. So.
And now you have a baby, right?
Yeah.
So cool. Well, let's talk about that baby.
Yes.
So y'all got married in April of 2022.
Right.
And so how long then, I guess, until you got pregnant?
Yeah.
And
So
was that a very intentional planned pregnancy?
So we were doing the natural cycles, and we were
worked
keeping up
for
with
us.
that. Yeah.
Until we decided
perfectly.
we didn't want to prevent anymore. So it did work for us. Some people question whether or not it works, but
No, it worked pretty well for sure. And we just kind of came to this point. We didn't talk too much about it. It was just we're not gonna
prevent today.
Yeah, not gonna prevent. Why not? And
see what happens.
Yeah, and so it wasn't too long.
Yeah, it was about a month from when we decided we weren't going to prevent anymore, and I kind of stopped tracking my cycle. And then my period was late the next month, so it was December early December, we think, like, when,
22.
you know. So, yeah, it was around Christmas time that my period was late, and I was like, okay, I'm going to take a pregnancy test, like, on Christmas. That would be fun to see, you know, like, and it hadn't been long that we'd been, like, not preventing, so I knew that I wouldn't really be disappointed if it was negative, because it hadn't been long at all, so I didn't want to, like, ruin Christmas Day if, like, I was sad, but I was like, it's only been, like, a month, so we could take a pregnancy test, and if it is positive, that would be exciting. So he went and got me a pregnancy test and put it in my stocking on Christmas. So
it was like we kept talking about getting a test, and then we never went to the store to get one. And so it was like I was last minute Christmas shopping, and I decided to go and grab that as well. And she was like, well, Christmas Eve, she was like, oh man, we forgot to get a test. And I was like, you know, it'll be fine. We can just take one after, you know. Yeah. She got to see that on Christmas morning.
So it was positive then?
It was positive. The very first pregnancy test I ever took in my life was positive. Yeah. So that was exciting. We actually looked at it together at the same time. Like, you know, we just waited to look at it, and then we looked at it at the same time. And it was definitely a moment of shock. Yeah. Just seeing the positive there and being like, our whole life is not going to be the same ever again. Yeah. So that was exciting, but we like immediately called our friends, Matthew and Monica, that go to church with us. Yeah, we immediately called them.'re in our community group too. And
they lead it.
Yeah, they had called us when they were pregnant. When they found out they were pregnant. So we were like, we're going to call them and tell them that we're pregnant. And we just, you know, it's hard to like contain it when you're so excited. So we were like, we'll just call them. There's like safe people to tell, you know, we just wanted to talk about it. Yeah. So we told them, and it was really sweet.
Oh, yeah. Matthew started crying, and that was just
precious. Because we knew that like we would be kind of going through that like season of life together with them too. So it's just really sweet.
They were getting ready to have...
Jet. They were getting ready to have him, and so it's sweet because we have kind of gone through that journey of like pregnancy and going into parenthood together in a lot of ways, so that's been really cool. You know, we kind of waited a little bit to tell our family, so it was exciting on Christmas because we were just like keeping that secret. We were like, we know we're pregnant, but no one else knows, so it was really sweet.
Yeah, and they kept asking her like, you know, what I got her for Christmas.
A baby.
Yeah. So we were trying to keep that shut, you know.
I remember talking to you, Scotlyn, at church when y'all were, I think you were engaged, and we were talking about babies and all this stuff. And I remember we were standing in a circle of women, and I don't remember who else was there. I just remember you saying, I can't wait to be a mom. And I'm so excited to have kids one day. And maybe we'll wait, like you said, like maybe we'll wait a year after we get married. But if it happens before then, I would be happy, like something like that. Yeah. And then you were talking about like maybe wanting to do a natural birth and all these things. And I was just like, in my heart, I was like, I am so excited for this girl right now.
That's funny because I don't even remember saying all that.
You probably don't.
But I was overflowing with excitement to have babies. So.
Yeah. And you were like, I think you guys were probably like a month out from getting married or something. And I just remember being like on cloud 9 for you.
Yeah.
It's always so like, I'm so excited when people become parents for the first time. It's just, and get married, of course. But
and it's just, it's life-changing in the best way. So.
For sure.
So how did the pregnancy go? Is it smooth? Any bumps in the road?
It was smooth physically up until the end, but like first trimester, I dealt with a lot of depression. Like, it hit pretty hard for some reason, and I really was not expecting that at all. Like, I know that I was kind of preparing myself for, okay, people go through postpartum depression. Like, maybe I would be someone who would deal with that. But I had never really dealt with a lot of depression in my life, so being hit with it so hard, like, in first trimester was really hard because I wanted to be excited for, you know, everything, and it was just really hard to. But physically, I felt good. Like, I was a little nauseous, but I didn't really have, like, vomiting. I just threw up one time during the pregnancy when I had a stomach bug. Yeah. So other than that, it was just, I had nausea and I had to eat, like, pretty constantly. I would be snacking, like, all day. But
Yeah.
And I know I was like texting you about that too. Like, what can I eat like to not feel so nauseous, you know?
Yeah.
But I think, some of that is just part of it. But yeah, I didn't have a lot going on physically. I felt really good. And then second trimester, the depression just kind of like went away. Like literally as soon as I hit like 14 weeks, it was like, bye depression. Like I feel good now.
Wow.
So it was really weird and hard to like deal with because it was just like clockwork. Like immediately it just went away and I was like, okay, I guess we're good now. Like I don't know what
Did your nausea and depression go away at the same time?
Yeah. I mean,
pretty
my
much.
nausea pretty much went away second trimester too. So
So that was all hormonal then.
yeah, I think it was all hormonal. It wasn't something that lasted, which I was grateful for that it was just a short time that I dealt with that. But, I struggled like mentally just because I was so used to having a greater capacity to do things. And like I was at work and I would just feel useless because it was like I have no energy. I'm so used to being like go, go, go. And I can just get stuff done and like connect with people. And I was just having a hard time with all of that. Because I was currently working at the church as a resident and it was a very busy like schedule and we were with people all day and it was really hard to be pregnant and do that to the extent that I was before and I couldn't. So I really had to like get humbled and just realize that like I needed to ask for help and like I couldn't do all the things that I was used to doing. And I just didn't have the capacity that I did when I wasn't pregnant. So that was hard, but it was good learning experience.
I guess the one thing you didn't like were cankles.
Towards the end of the pregnancy, I dealt with a lot of like swelling. That was really uncomfortable. I mean, it was bad swelling.
It was just down
And it kind of got to the point where, mostly my legs and feet.
Legs, yeah.
But then I started having some like high blood pressure readings and stuff at my OB appointments and which I guess I need to talk about how we went about that during the pregnancy and stuff. But anyway, towards the end I was dealing with like high blood pressure and they were kind of monitoring me for like maybe preeclampsia, which I didn't end up getting diagnosed with it because I never had protein in my urine or anything, but I did have some like floaters like in my vision and stuff and headaches and I had like the upper right rib cage pain, like upper right abdomen pain, and then high blood pressure too. So it was like I had a lot of symptoms that they were kind of monitoring me for.
Yeah, but up until right before you were going to get monitored for it, you didn't say that you had any floaters because like we had talked about like the different symptoms and everything. But then it was like right before you were like, okay, I have some.
I did have some, but I was like, I wonder if I had been having them before and I just didn't notice, like because when I was more aware of it. There was some floaters happening in my vision, but it wasn't anything like too bad. So I just had some NSTs, like non-stress tests towards the end to, they were kind of monitoring me to see if they wanted to induce me or not. But then they ended up my blood pressure was stable enough to where they decided not to do that. So I was glad.
The first
Praise
time,
God.
the first time we went in, like it was just under that threshold of too high of a blood pressure. It was just under there. But then the next time that we went in, everything was like perfect. It was a normal blood pressure, heart rate, all those different things. And so, we were just like, all right, cool. Because it was earlier than we were wanting it to be. I mean, you weren't full term, obviously. And so I was a camp director at the time. And so I was like talking to the board members and I was like, hey, we just went in for this NST and her readings are a little high. Next time we go in, it could be a problem. We might have to get induced, who knows? And but then things ended up working out.
And that few days like before I actually ended up going into labor, I was really, really emotional. Like I don't know if it was hormones or just the thought of like I'm actually about to have a baby, but I think it was also our plans were kind of, it felt like getting like upended, I guess you could say, because we weren't sure if I was going to go in for the NST and then they were going to keep me because I needed to be induced. Like it was like they always left it up in the air. Like maybe the next time you come, you might not go home. So you should always bring your hospital bag. So I was just so anxious. And like I had this one day, like a few days before going into labor with him. And I was literally like crying the entire day. Like I just could not stop crying. it was the craziest thing. I've never dealt with that much emotion in my life. Like, I just could not get it under control. And I think it was partially hormones, but also, like, just, I don't know, a lot just to take in, like, thinking my birth plan might not work out the way I wanted it to, and just thinking about bringing a whole child into the world, and then all the hormones. It was just a lot to, but it's all good.
So how did you go about planning your birth and getting care and all of that? Like, what was that experience like?
Yeah.
Well, we got to go through that class with you, which was great, and just learning a whole bunch of different things, just being informed about different processes, different ideas, for the plan. And so we had talked about a few different things, like didn't want to be induced, if we could help it. Didn't want to have any of the pain medication or the epidural or anything. Wanted to do it all natural. I forgot, there were a few other things that we had talked about, but we didn't end up putting together a list until
shortly before.
Yeah, just before.
I guess we should talk about the OB too. So, like, I started off at Wendover OBGYN, and I had just gotten really good recommendations about that. Like, people told me it was a great place, and they had midwives, which I wanted to see midwives if I could. I started out with an OB, though, and I was going to, like, transfer to a midwife, but because I was also interested in doing a water birth in the hospital, because I knew that at Cone you could do that, but we ended up running into issues with insurance, like, halfway through the pregnancy, I guess.
Yeah.
We thought that I was going to be covered, like, under my mom's insurance for, like, maternity stuff, but it ended up not being the case, and it was just a lot. So we ended up switching to a different OB that was, like, at the same hospital that my mom works at, like, the doctor's office across the street from there, and it was a pretty good experience. When we first transferred, we had a really hard time because they just, it was, like, I guess typically how you would think of an OB office. Like, at Wendover, I felt very cared for. Like, I felt like they, especially the OB we were seeing, she was very, like, thoughtful and explained things, and I realized that that's not really a normal experience for an OB. But the one we transferred to was very, like, just cut to the chase, like, do y'all have any questions? And we're like, we don't know. Yeah, so because of insurance stuff, we ended up switching to another OB in Eden.
Yeah, because she was under her mom's insurance, and then her mom switched what insurance she was on. And so we thought that she would still be covered and that it was going to actually be a lot cheaper when we went to this new place because of the new insurance. But then things did not turn out that way, which is unfortunate. But we didn't know that until, we were in the process for a little while. Actually, until it was pretty close to him being born.
Yeah.
So y'all were in Reedsville at the time.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So Eden wasn't that far from us. It was about the same distance as if we had come to Cone. So that part wasn't, that bad. Yeah. But, we had a pretty typical experience with the OB. It wasn't a bad experience. I think it took me a while to get used to the fact that they wouldn't really ask us, or they wouldn't really explain things very well. Since it was our first baby, we didn't really have a clue about things. Like, we were in the process of, reading our own stuff and getting educated and stuff about how it all worked, but we kind of just didn't know what we didn't know. And so they would ask us, do you have any questions? And then that would just be that. And we'd be like, I don't think so. We don't really know.
We don't know what to ask.
Yeah, we didn't really know what to ask. But throughout the pregnancy, we also were I was reading a ton. Like, I read just stuff online, but also I read Ina May's Guide to Childbirth, and I really loved that. And that helped me a lot. I listened to a ton of birth story, like, podcasts and stuff. Other podcasts before yours was a podcast. Now I listen to yours every week, but
and
before
you watched so many.
I watched stuff.
Births.
It was just I was trying to get as much taken it all in, like, how many outcomes there could be, which I think was really helpful to just know that, like, every birth is different. And I was going for a natural birth, like, we talked about that throughout, and I wanted to be open to the idea of, like, getting an epidural or, like, going the pain meds route, because I was just like, I don't know. I didn't want to, like, close myself off to that and then be, like, in just the worst place ever and not just, I don't know. I was having a hard time, like, going full in on the, like, I'm going natural and I'm not going to take any pain meds or anything. I was like, well, like, if I get in there and it's really hard and I'm just, like, not sure, then, like, maybe I'll go for it. But my plan going in was to go naturally. So before going into labor, we met, so I went in for one of the NSTs at the hospital, and this was, like, the Saturday before I went into labor, went into labor the following Tuesday. And this Saturday I went in for the NST, and we met this nurse there who was amazing. And she was like, we didn't know if she would be on shift whenever we were having our baby, because we were hoping that we wouldn't be induced. So we were like, we don't know if she'll be there, but we just pray that she's there, you know, because she was like advocating for us. And like, she looked at our birth plan and knew that we wanted to go naturally and wanted to like keep the interventions to a minimum, and she was very like understanding about that and excited about that even. Like, she described herself as like the crunchy nurse on her floor or her unit and stuff. So it was cool because we got to know her and like bond with her a little bit, and so we were just really hoping that she would be there when we had the baby, and she was. So that was a really big blessing, which we'll talk about more. So the Saturday we went in for the NST, and then like, you mean when we went into the hospital to have him? I guess that was, I mean, we could
Wednesday, Okay, so tell us
we
about how you went into labor.
How we went into labor, So I was 39 weeks and 2 days. It was a Tuesday morning, and it was like 7:30. I woke up to my water, like, just in the bed, like, big puddle. And I was like, I'm having a baby now. Like, I was so excited, and probably just too giddy, because even though I read all these stories about how it could be different, I just thought, my baby's coming in the next few hours because my water's broken. So that's just, it's happening. So I was really excited. I got in the shower and was like so like giddy. I was like, oh man, like this is happening. So pretty much that whole day, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I was a camp director, and so we were living on camp property at this time. And so that's important for something else I'll say in a minute. But
So 7:30 was when my water broke, and then immediately put on a like Depends because I was just leaking all day. And so I was like, we were just, I wasn't of the mind that we needed to immediately go to the hospital. Like, because I wasn't having contractions and stuff. So I was like, okay, well, we'll just wait it out, and hopefully my body will sort of like kick it into gear like throughout the day. And then we won't need to, like, I still wanted to stay at home and labor at home as much as I possibly could. That was the plan. So since I wasn't having really intense contractions, I was like, okay, we'll just try to do some things to get it going. So we went and got some food. We went to Chick-fil-A and got breakfast, and then we came back home and we just walked around a bunch. Like, we walked probably a good few miles. And
not all at once, but we did go on a couple of walks, and then we also had a dog, and so she got a lot of good outside time at that point.
She probably had the best day of her life because we were outside all day.
We walked over to the other side of camp, and there's a tractor that we would use for camp, like to take the kids from one side to the other. So it had this big old trailer with hay on it on the back, and since that was on the other side and I needed to bring it back and then get everything take the trailer off and whatnot.
Since he knew he was about to be off for a couple weeks, since we were about to have a baby, he was like trying to get the last minute camp stuff done. So I'm literally hopped up in the the back of the trailer in the tractor and in early labor. So I was having some mild contractions, but they were very, very mild and
inconsistent.
Couldn't really track them, and so I was getting kind of frustrated, honestly, throughout the day because I wanted it to go ahead and kick into gear. And like, I was walking a bunch and I was like bouncing on the exercise ball, and I was just like, come on, baby, come on. And it just wasn't really happening. Nothing was really happening. So, and then, I had been texting you throughout the day since we went through the class with you. I was like, asking a couple questions about it and trying to figure out where I was like in the whole process, I guess. And then, we kind of started getting some, like, people were calling, like, our family, and were texting us and stuff and like asking us what we were doing, and they were kind of concerned that we hadn't gone into the hospital because my water was already broken.
Them that your water was broken?
Yes, and I think in the future I would probably not go into as much detail about how things were going with so many people, because it wasn't a lot of people. It was like our parents and like, but they didn't necessarily hold the same like perspective of like, you shouldn't, like, their thought is your water breaks, you go to the hospital immediately. Yeah. Like that's just what their perspective is. So,
but if you're not in labor.
Yeah, exactly. But I wasn't in active labor, so I was afraid that I go to the hospital and they're gonna put me on Pitocin, which is what happened. But anyway, but at least it was drawn out a little bit more, and so I think my body at least was a little bit more prepared to like go ahead and get it going, because my water had been broken for going on like 18 hours at that point. So anyway, we called around like dinner time. We called the hospital because we had been talking to some family and stuff, and they were like asking us what we were doing and whatever. So we just talked to the hospital and told them what was going on, like basically that my water was broken, but I wasn't having really consistent contractions. And they were like, first of all, they were not happy that we weren't there yet. They were not pleased with that.
You don't ever say that. You just you can say I think my water broke if you want to, but I wouldn't tell them what time.
So we did, and they did put us on the clock. So they were like saying they had an 18-hour policy that was basically like, if you, what was it? Pretty much they want you to come in between, they want you to come in before that mark.
Yeah, they just wanted you to be there with them before the 18-hour mark from when your water broke.
So that's exactly when we went in. We went in at 18 hours. So we were
what time of day was that then?
This was
midnight. About midnight.
Midnight. Yeah.
So we slept for we went to bed at like 10, and we slept for like an hour and a half, and then we woke up and like we're like, okay, let's go to the hospital.
Yeah.
So I was at the same point, like I wasn't really having consistent contractions, or maybe I had like really mild ones, but I could barely even feel them. So I went in at about midnight, and then they, took me upstairs in the wheelchair, like, as they do at the hospital. Yeah. But I was perfectly fine. And then they started like an IV, which was not something that I really wanted. But
like of fluids?
Yeah, fluids. Okay. Fluids, but shortly after started Pitocin. So it was about a couple hours. We had been there for a couple hours before they started me on Pitocin.
Yeah, it started Pitocin at 3 a.m. So.
And then it got crazy after that, because it pretty much within probably like 30 minutes of them starting Pitocin, I would say, I was definitely in active labor. Like I just started having very consistent contractions, and
they were a little more than mild, but like they weren't as bad as later on.
They got progressively, obviously they got progressively worse, but
right. Well, with your water already being broken and being on Pitocin, that's gonna make for some pretty intense contractions.
Yeah. And I was having them mostly my back. Like it was more so my back was in pain than anything else. Like it wasn't really the front.
Yeah.
So we started active labor around like 3, and then I was, for that next few hours, like not having a good time at all. I was having a hard time coping, like mentally. I was just not in a good place, and it was just hit me really hard, and all of a sudden, and I was really struggling. And so throughout that few hours, there was one nurse, or like I had a couple nurses that were on shift at that point, not including the one who we had met that Saturday before. So that night was different nurses, and then she came in early morning the next morning. Thankfully. So, but 3 a.m., to about 6:30-ish was really rough, because I didn't have like really support besides like my mom and Jaylen were there. And I'm really grateful for that, because they prayed over me a lot and were very encouraging. But it was like they didn't really have tools to help me cope with the pain besides just like talking me through it, and talking me through it was not really working because I wasn't reasoning very well at the time. So
did you try counter pressure? Like we did in class?
Yeah, did counter pressure.
Did you like it?
I didn't like
some
counter
people
pressure.
like it, some people don't.
Yeah. I remember being like, no, that doesn't really help.
No, that's not for me.
It wasn't for me.
But yeah.
I don't remember how I said it, but I must have not been very nice about it. Yeah. But yeah, I don't.
Me, probably.
Yeah.
But I didn't really like counter pressure, and so at that point I had started considering like pain medication or whatever. Like I wasn't thinking about an epidural yet, but I was like, okay, I could think about like doing like IV pain meds, but they didn't really, I know we talked about it a little bit in the class, but they didn't really explain to me like risks and benefits and stuff like that in the hospital. It was just like, do you want medication? And the nurse, that we had, I mean, I think she was doing her job well, you know, just in the way that she knows to do it. I think she was just very like kind of traditional or like old school. So I was just laying there in the bed the whole time, didn't move. And so obviously I'm just not doing well. I wasn't even moving around. And that was not the plan. Like I wanted to be like up and moving.
Up and
I didn't
around.
really want to have an IV. Maybe I was open to having like the hep lock thing just in case I needed it, but I didn't really want to be constantly on it. So anyway, I was just laying in the bed and pretty much in the same position the whole time until Carrie, who was the other nurse, got there at about 6:30 in the morning. And this was right before I decided I was going to go for like the pain meds.
Yeah.
It was about 6 or somewhere around like 6 or 6:30. Jaylen and my mom, they said they were going to pray for me because I was really struggling with like, I didn't want to give up on my like natural childbirth plan, but I was really not doing well. And so I was like, I want to do the pain meds, but I also don't at the same time. So we were like praying through it. And at the end of the prayer, well, you can talk a little bit about that, I guess.
Yeah.
What you think about it.
So I guess so what was hard for her, which, you know, I know that she has a solid pain tolerance, you know, but at the same time, I told her beforehand that whenever we would do swim tests or whatnot at the camp, there would be this, 30 seconds that we would do. It was like the kids had to swim from one end of the pool to the other without touching the bottom and without touching the walls. And then they had to tread water for 30 seconds, and we would do everybody's at the same time. And like what was hard for some of those kids was, since they weren't strong swimmers, they weren't sure if they were going to be able to tread water as long. Like at first they were like, oh yeah, I can do this. But then once we're getting into it, since they don't know how much longer they have, like, you know, they kind of give up. Some kids, like, they would stop right before, you know, the timer would go
like
off.
28 seconds or
something.
something.
Exactly. And, you know, other kids, it would just kind of freak them out, and then they just, you know, wouldn't go very long, or they just wouldn't do it at all. And so I was telling her that because since she wanted to do this without medication, I was telling her, like, this is going to be tougher on you than you think, because since you don't know how long you're going to be in this, you may have a strong pain tolerance, but that mental side is gonna be hard. And at first she didn't really like that I was saying that, you know. But
I still don't really like it, even though I know it's true.
Yeah. But while we were there, like, that was really what was getting to her, is the mental side of things.
Not knowing how much longer you had.
Exactly. Because like the contractions, like, they were progressively getting worse. Part of it was because they were upping the amount of Pitocin, because she wasn't kind of kicking into gear on her own still.
Which
so it was
ended
a
up
good few
being
hours.
a low dose. Like, it was like 8.
It was 6, I think. It was
I
like
don't know
2.
what is it like milligrams, or I'm not sure the dosage, how they do the dosage, but basically they started it at 2, whatever, and then they bumped it up 3 times, and it was at 8. That was enough for me to be like,
yeah, they usually bump it up every 30 minutes until they see what they want to see on the monitors for your contractions.
And that's what they did. But
yeah. And so
I don't know,
because they were like getting stronger, and she didn't know how long she was gonna have to go, she was like, man, I don't know if I can keep taking this or take worse ones, you know, as time goes on, if I'm not gonna be pushing it. And so, that was tough on her. And so, like, you know, we were trying to encourage her and whatnot beforehand and throughout it all, and just remind her of what the plan was. But, she wasn't doing so hot. And so, one of the nurses, she came in and...
Is Carrie the nurse?
Carrie is a nurse, but it wasn't her time yet. Yeah, she wasn't on the stage yet. But this other lady, she came in, and Scotlyn, just gotten finished with, like, you know, one of those rounds of contractions, and she had come in and saw that, you know, Scotlyn was crying because of the pain and everything. She had asked her if she was okay, and I don't quite remember, like, I don't know if you said no, or if you just said that you were...
I don't remember what I said, but I'm sure it wasn't yes.
Or if you were just like, I'm all right, you know?
Sniff, sniff.
Yeah. And, either way, like, she that she suggested, that you could do one of those forms of
like an IV pain medication.
Yeah, that or the epidural. And then she was kind of trying to talk you into it. And I was like, man, please don't
It's like,
fall for that.
the
But,
angel
like,
and devil on your shoulder kind of thing,
Yeah.
where it's like, of course, when you're in like a lot of pain and then someone's like, here's this option for you. I was like, okay, sure,
Yeah.
we could do that.
good.
And I still was wrestling with it a bit, but I was definitely leaning more in that direction after she was encouraging me in that direction.
Yeah.
And then it just wasn't, there wasn't someone that was like willing to tell me like, you can do this and you have to kind of thing until the nurse got there. Until the other nurse got there.
Yeah.
So, well, anyways, I guess they, like, you guys prayed over me.
Yeah.
And that was, like, when I decided, like, I feel at peace with, like, going ahead and getting the medication. This was at, like, 6:30-ish or something in the morning.
A little bit before then, yeah. And then the lady said, okay, she went out or I think she, radioed or whatever.
Yeah, she was going to get it, like,
Yeah.
Going to get like the IV pain meds.
She was
Yeah.
literally on her way to get it.
And so she had, right after she did that, then she walked out. And then we prayed over Scotlyn and just like, whatever it is that the Lord wanted to do in this moment, however he wanted this to go, whether he wanted her to get the medication or not. And I forgot, there was some third thing that had come to my mind at that time. And so, yeah, like we were just praying about that. And then right after we finished the prayer, Carrie walks in. And I was like, that's crazy. And she said that she had just gotten there a little bit early. She had some stuff that she needed to do, but she had heard over the, the little radio, because she had just gotten there, and she had heard that that they were supposed to be bringing the stuff in for her, and she was like,
that's my girl, and we're not doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
So she immediately walks in, and she's like, we're stopping this right now. We're not doing this.
She said, if you still want to stick with that birth plan, then just wait for me to get finished with this thing that I have to do first, and I'll come back.
She was like, can you just hold on for like 15
Yeah.
minutes? I'm going to finish these like notes that I have to do, and then I'm coming back in here. And once she came back in, she did not leave until the baby was born.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
she
So
was
she kind of
so,
became like your doula.
yeah,
yeah,
pretty
yeah.
much. And she was so like just everything that I needed her to be, even though like it was hard for me to hear some of the things she was saying because she wasn't giving me like really the option like because she knew that's what I wanted. It wasn't
Right.
like, and I still have had a little bit of a hard time with like, wow, she really just took my choice away, but
Yeah.
but at the same time, like I know that that's what I wanted, and I am grateful that she was there because she was willing to like get in my face and be like, you have to go through this, like you can't get around it, like you just have to go through, and you don't have that much longer, so you can do it,
Yeah.
And she was just really empowering to like help me get kind of out of like the headspace I was in, that like I'm just suffering and this is the worst thing that's ever
Yeah.
happened, to like you can do this, and this is like something that you've wanted to do, and like your body is doing it right now, and that like you will get through, And
Yeah.
so she just like kind of pulled me out of that space. And I still had a really hard time. I wouldn't say like it was great from there on, because obviously it was like I was close to like going into transition. Like when she got there, I mean, it wasn't far off, I guess. I don't remember if she checked me when she got there
I think
to see how far along I was.
Yeah, I think she checked you. You were at 3 for a while, but I don't.
But
yeah.
she did a lot of things, like she got me out of the bed and got me like on a ball, like bouncing on a ball. She gave me like a peanut ball too. I was like standing, and I went into the bathroom for some contractions, like I was on the toilet. Like I was kind of all over the place once she got there, because she really helped me like just advocate for me to move around. I don't know if this has a specific term, but she like would grab my legs and like shake them. Yeah. Is that
Yeah,
like
that
a
was
certain,
great.
is there something?
We call it like you're shaking the apple tree. Like,
Yeah,
and,
she
yes,
did that, and that was
it helps-
very helpful for
it
me.
helps relax you.
Yeah. That helped a ton.
Yeah.
She was just very like knowledgeable, obviously, because she was doing all the things and she was trying a bunch of things, and I would just ask me if it was helpful or not. And, so I'm so grateful for her. She really did take on like a doula type of role, I think, in that space too. And then I guess it was around like maybe 9 a.m., I got back to the same point, which is this was probably transition, where I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I have to get the epidural.
Yeah, when it hit about 9, was when she was like, all right, I'm done. Like, I've got to do something. And so Carrie was like, yeah, let me check you one last time. And so she did. And this girl was 9.5 centimeters.
You were almost there,
yeah.
girl.
And so she was like, you're right here. Oh, man, I got to go and get the OBs.
Let's go get the stuff ready.
Yeah.
She was like, okay, you can do this now. Like, you're in, like, the home stretch. And so I was like, okay.
Yeah, she was like, he's here. It's time.
Let's
go.
You're basically done. You're just going to start pushing.
And he is here.
Yeah.
We can hear him.
Yeah. So that was encouraging. That was a moment of like, okay, like I can do this, And I mean, I still wasn't very excited about the fact that I had to keep going.
Yeah.
But it was good.
But then you knew you didn't have that much longer.
Right. Yeah. And I think, I don't know, I've just reflected on it and I'm hoping that next time around, Lord willing, that we have more children, that I would be able to just prepare more on the mental side of being able to like meditate on truth and being able to deal with it and cope with like the pain in a better way. I don't know. I have a hard time with it because on the one hand, I'm just like really proud of myself and like the accomplishment that is to like go through that without like pain medication, but also I feel still like kind of disappointed in like how I coped with it. Like I just felt like I wasn't like as strong as I would have liked to have been.
I will say you were having a pain med free labor. Yes. But your labor was not natural. Remember, it was Pitocin induced contractions, which are not the same as natural labor contractions. They are much more intense and synthetic and man-made. So it operates on your uterus in a way that is a lot more unkind than God's original design. And your water was broken already. Yeah. So you had no cushion, no softening for those contractions. It was just head on cervix.
Yeah.
And so Pitocin contractions with no water are no joke. Like those contractions are so much more intense than like natural labor contractions that come about spontaneously when you do still have your water. So I don't want you to be disappointed in yourself at all for, mentally having a hard time with that, because that is a hard thing. And I am light years proud of you when you told me the next day that, he was here and you did it. And yes, you're on Pitocin, but you made it. And I knew your water had already broken. And the first thing that came to my mind was, wow, I cannot believe, I am so proud of Scotlyn that she just went through a whole labor without pain medication, without water on Pitocin. Like, that is incredible.
Yeah, I definitely have had a hard time, like, just in processing it and wanting to be proud of myself and kind of being proud of myself. And then another piece of me being kind of disappointed in how I dealt with it all. But, it was a learning experience. And, like, I never had been through it before. So it was all, like, very new. And I wasn't sure how it would go. So, yeah, I think next time I would do some things differently in preparation and things like that, but also like I want to learn to give myself some grace too, and that's not something that comes naturally to me. So my inner dialogue is usually negative towards myself. So I think it was an interesting time because it like brought out that like what's going on in my head is coming out because there's like no filter when you're in labor. So it was very vulnerable. And I think I want to learn to like be able to speak truth to myself and speak like kindly to myself so that when I'm in that space again, I'm able to just like lean on the Lord more and like trust that what he says about me is true and just be able to like declare that over the birth and not give into like the negativity that's in my head, which like I know that to a degree it's just there's pain involved in it and that's just part of it. And so, well, I mean, some people might say that it's not, that it doesn't have to be that way. I don't know. I'm definitely like, I feel like I wrestle with that. Like, does it have to be this way? Like, maybe I could have a birth that, like, isn't, that I wouldn't describe as painful, or at least I wouldn't describe it as, like, suffering like I would this one. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'll have another story to tell eventually that is more, I guess, redemptive. But, yeah, it was definitely hard and put me to the test a lot mentally. But anyway, so I guess getting back to how he actually was born, which is exciting, probably the most exciting part of it.
Yeah.
When she told me that I was, 9.5 centimeters, I was like, okay, we're, in the home stretch now. So then it was probably about 9:15 or between 9 and 9:15 that, like, I started pushing. And I also think that my body, like, wasn't really ready for that. Like, I think we started pushing probably a little bit prematurely because because I ended up tearing, like, I had a 2nd-degree tear, and I just feel like it could have been prevented maybe if I just, like, kind of let my body more so naturally, like, lead me into that, which I don't know how that all works with Pitocin, like, if it would have been a long time before my body, like, kind of naturally started pushing, or if it was, like, also coming soon, like, I'm not really sure, but I do know that they kind of started coaching me through pushing, and I didn't really feel the urge to push at the point. Like, it felt somewhat good because I knew I was, like, channeling the pain into something, like, and I could see, like, the progress happening and stuff. So that really helped me. They actually brought a mirror in so I could, like, see it, and that helped a lot just with being able to, like, see what the progress and know what I was doing and know how to kind of, like, where I needed to push and that kind of thing. But yeah, I wasn't really feeling the urge, I guess. I really wouldn't describe it as ever feeling the urge. Like, it didn't really feel like I was naturally doing, like, my body was naturally doing that. I felt like I was just doing it and putting a lot of effort into it.
Like, you never felt like the super intense pressure that made you feel like, I have to push this baby out?
Maybe I did feel pressure, but you hear how people will say, like, oh, it felt like my body was, like, heaving, like you have, like, when you're, like, vomiting, but the opposite direction.
Yes.
And I never felt that.
Did you feel that way when he was crowning, like when his head was, like, almost all the way out?
I don't know that I would describe it that way still. I mean, maybe it was, like, maybe there was so much pressure at that point. I was on my back pushing.
Okay, that could have had something to do with it too.
Maybe, yeah. But they just put me in the normal, like, back in
the American standard stirrup position.
Yes, very typical, like, on my back pushing. I'm curious, too, what it would be like to push in another position. But I was on my back, and it wasn't bad.
Different.
I mean, yeah, I definitely was. That was probably my favorite part of the labor because I felt, like, in control. Like, I could, like, channel what I was feeling into something. So I wasn't focused as much on the pain because I was focused on, I see the baby's head coming out. So he's coming soon, And everyone was really, like, encouraging during that time and just, like, really was, like, speaking, like, oh, like, he's almost here, like, you're doing so great,
Yeah.
So that was really encouraging. And it was about, I guess, like, 50-ish minutes of pushing, and then he came out. So he came out at 9:53 a.m. So it was, like, less than an hour of pushing. So it wasn't too bad. And yeah, it was really sweet.
In less than an hour between when you said I want the epidural and when he came out.
Yeah. So I know that I was, like, going through transition at that time where I was really desperate for something to help me, So, and she also, I meant to mention that Carrie, she, like, gave me this, she, like, rolled up a sheet, like, really tight, and, like, I was, like, playing, like, tug of war with her. My arms were so sore, like, the whole, next 2 days from pulling on that thing so hard, but it, like, helped me kind of have something to, like, give me leverage to push. Yeah, so that helped a lot, too. I would recommend doing that.
Pulling on the sheet. Yeah, sometimes they'll have you pull, like, your knees, like, behind your knees, like, on your legs for leverage, and then other times, a sheet is helpful if that's the position you're in, because it's hard, like, when you're laying down like that to be able to get, like, that friction and leverage that you need to push in that way.
Yeah. But everything was good. Like, once he was born, he was, like, perfectly healthy and like, started crying when he came out and everything. And then we did get to have like a good amount of time, like just skin to skin, like as soon as he came out, and that was sweet. And we did kind of delayed cord clamping, like it wasn't as soon as I guess they normally would do it. And yeah, it was good. I mean, everything went well, like from that point. I definitely went through like a lot of highs and lows, like emotionally, after like the first couple of days after he was born, which I know is normal. But
Yeah.
I was on a major high for like the first little bit, like after he was born. I just wanted everyone to see him, like my accomplishment. Like
You were so proud.
Yes, I was so proud. Like we had tons of family. Like we had like 10 or 12 people like waiting. That just, I didn't even know they were all there, but they all just flooded in whenever he was born.
Oh my gosh.
They all came in, and I actually, before I had him, I thought, I'm not going to want visitors, like, soon after. Like, it'll be, I'll probably just want to have, like, private, like, time with like, just our family and stuff before we have all these visitors. But I was like, everyone come in, see him,
Come
like,
see
he's perfect,
did.
like, I was just so excited, so I wanted everyone to see. But yeah, I mean, it all went really well, and, like, I guess healing and stuff postpartum went pretty smoothly for me. Like, obviously I had the tear, which I wasn't super happy about, but it wasn't, I never knew any different. So it wasn't bad, and it healed up really easily, like over a few weeks. So that wasn't bad. And I feel like I just had a really good postpartum experience. Like, I mean, I did have some emotions with it, of course, like everyone does, but overall it was really good. And we had a pretty good time, like, breastfeeding too. And I've really enjoyed that, like, throughout. I mean, he's 6.5 months old now, so it's been good so far with breastfeeding him. And so
I know that you talked about, like, being disappointed in processing and working through that, but overall I'm just so happy for you and proud of you and excited for your future experiences. Because I mean, I've had 5.
Mm-hmm.
And I have learned multiple things in each one. And every time I've had a birth, I think about how I would do things differently the next time. And I just had my 5th, and I still have those thoughts. This is how I would change things for next time. This is what I would do next time. Maybe it just doesn't come easily for me learning all those lessons, but it's that was your first experience. And I think overall, I am proud of you.
Thank you.
I think you and Jaylen did a wonderful, wonderful job.
Thanks. Yeah, I definitely saw the power of prayer during it, and then just having people around me to like advocate and to speak truth into me when I wasn't, in the right headspace to really do that for myself. Like having people around me who could do that was really beneficial too. So
what do you feel like the Lord taught you through this experience of becoming a mother, of pregnancy, of childbirth, of becoming a mom for the first time? What do you feel like the Lord's taught you through this?
I feel like I've learned a lot of things, but I think one big one is just like that I won't do things perfectly, and it's really challenged me because I have been a perfectionist and still am to a degree, but it's helped me like learn that I'm going to do some things wrong, and I'm going to do some things that, like, in parenting, during labor, I look back on it and I'm like, man, I wish I would have done this. But the Lord was still, like, in all of that and still faithful, and he brought it to completion. Like, it didn't have to be I do everything perfectly, and then he works through that to do it. It was like, I did some things wrong, and I still am I know that I'm making mistakes, like, as a parent, like, you just do, and there's things that, we are gonna fail at, but he's still able to bring that all to fruition and make it fruitful and bring things to completion, like, in the way that he intends to, regardless of our, like, shortcomings, So I think that has been really encouraging and, like, helped me, like, kind of like what I was saying before about how I have a hard time giving myself grace, of just realizing that, I'm gonna fail, and God knows that I'm gonna fail, but he still has chosen me for this role, like, of being Apollos' mom, and he's still chosen me, like, as his child, and he's still he still loves me despite all of that, so that there doesn't have to be this like impossible standard that I'm holding myself to in anything, but I definitely feel like that has been true in birth because I had this like idea of what I wanted it to look like, and then I wasn't as strong as I would have liked to have been, So it really exposed me. Like it felt like I was exposed in like my weakness, I guess, which is not fun. But I think that the Lord like taught me that, I can still be loved like in that place because I was still loved like by them, by Jaylen and by my mom and by Carrie, like just people who are around me during the birth, like they saw me in that place and they still loved me there and still were there with me through all of that like moments of weakness. So that was really encouraging.
Do you have any advice for a first-time mom out there who you've just been through this experience of getting pregnant, going through pregnancy, going through childbirth and postpartum and breastfeeding for the first time? So if you could give any advice to a first-time mom or Jaylen to a first-time dad, what would it be?
I guess like what comes to mind for me is I dealt with like a lot of just internal anxiety first couple of months postpartum, like of just overthinking everything. And I don't know if I would describe it as like a diagnosis of postpartum anxiety. I think it was just that I was so like afraid of getting it wrong, that I wasn't doing, like I would just be paralyzed. Like, I mean, I still did things because obviously you have to, life goes on. You have to keep changing diapers. You have to keep feeding. You have to keep doing the things, So that helped me, but I would just encourage someone like a new mom to try to be in tune with your own instincts and like ability to be a mother, because I mean, I think it was the Holy Spirit like leading me in just mothering and knowing how to do that intuitively. I was so concerned about like doing it wrong. I think I took in like too much like content, whether it was from people around me, like other moms who did it a certain way, or just stuff I read. Like I read way too much. I probably would have just, maybe one piece of advice is just don't go to the internet for like parenting advice. Like just try to be in tune with what like your baby needs. Just listen to their cues because they will tell you when they need stuff. And, you're not going to do it all right at first, but you'll figure it out, because you have just like intuitively we're designed in a way that we know how to like respond to our baby's needs, like as moms. So I think I would just say, don't let fear and anxiety get in the way of you being the mother that you were created to be, because you are the one who God has chosen to be that child's mom, like he will equip you with what you need to do that. So I think I would just be a little bit more in tune with the Holy Spirit and his voice into parenting instead of trying to hear everyone else's voice and getting just clouded out, because I felt like I wasn't able to really focus, and I felt very anxious for the first little bit until I was able to just be like, okay, I can do this. Like God will give me what I need to do this, and I just need to stop trying to listen to everybody else and what everybody else thinks I should do. I have instincts and intuition, like as a woman and as a mom, to parent him. So I think I would just encourage a new mom to be more in tune with that and not worry about messing it up so much.
Man, you're preaching. I love that. I'm so proud. That makes me so happy to hear you say that.
Thanks. And do you have first-time dad advice?
Yeah, to all you fellas out there, something that I've heard from a few different people who are young parents, they end up finding out later on, that they've been having a hard time with their connection with one another and also just their relationship with the Lord. And so I would say that, especially as young dads, young husbands, just keep that priority, first, because you're not going to be able to lead your family effectively if he isn't first, if he isn't being pursued, you won't be able to properly pursue your wife and kid. And so like that would be the way that you grow in your wisdom and discernment and service and all of that stuff. And so, yeah, if you're doing that, then you're chasing the right path, So
Yeah. Thank y'all so much for coming and doing this today,
yeah,
especially amidst baby nap times. I know that can be hard.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
for sure. Yeah, grateful to be here.
Thanks again for joining us today. You can reach me at Surrendered Birth Services on Instagram or email me at contact@surrenderedbirthservices.com. Be sure not to miss an episode by hitting subscribe. Also, we'd love for you to leave a review of the show so that more people like you can hear more stories like these. If you really enjoyed this episode in particular, please take a screenshot and post it to your Instagram story, tagging Surrendered Birth Services. If you're interested in taking my childbirth classes, birth consultations, or having me as your birth doula, please click on the link in the show notes to take you to my website for online and in-person options. Just as a reminder, this show is not giving medical advice, so please continue to see your personal care provider as needs arise. Also, if you'd like to be a guest on the Surrendered Birth Stories podcast, please click the link in the episode show notes to get in touch with me. We hope you have a great week. And remember, learn all that you can, make the best plans, and then leave it in God's hands.